Hello YouTube, how we all doing today? Hope you guys are doing pretty good. It's your old hillbilly buddy Leo out here keeping the roads hot, looking for lost history stories, things of that nature. Today we decided to do a lost history murder story from 100 years ago for you guys. A lot of you seem to enjoy the lost history stories, and we hadn't done one in a while, so we thought we'd do one. So today we'll tell you a very lost and very tragic story from 1926 that happened here in Logan, West Virginia. This is a very small area that is knee-deep in violent history, if you so much as scratch the surface of what you see here today. At one time, this was a bustling and very prosperous city fueled by massive amounts of coal and railroad money, among other things. So many of these stories seem to involve men of the law as well, which we also find interesting. And this will be another one of those stories. The murder happened on Druggers Street, which I'm not sure, but I think may be a typo. The very next street over is Dingus, and there is no Drugger Street here in Logan. I'm pretty familiar with the town. I even know about a little one, Ott Street. It's only about 50 yards long, if that. So, you know, as far as I know, unless the name has changed over the years or something along those lines, I don't know of a Druggers Street. Anyway, the story I'm about to tell you began as a news article that we found in a December edition of the Logan Banner newspaper from 1926. Almost 100 years ago, in a tiny little area secluded in the mountain passes of southern West Virginia, James Mitchell Henderson, better known as just Mitch, had been a former chief of police for many years. According to Mitch, his 21-year-old son came home drunk on moonshine one evening about 5 p.m. The son's name was Kearney. Kearney was married with a child. His wife and child were visiting family in Ohio at the time. According to Mitch, Kearney had called his wife and became angry at some point and began to curse, which made Mitch angry. Mitch then said that he tried to get in between the argument, trying to involve himself and de-escalate the fight. Kearney pushed his mother for some reason during the argument. Not really sure exactly, about the details of that, but anyway, Mitch said that he shot him at that point. The bullet passed through Kearney's right side, severing an artery to his heart and then stopping just under his skin. Realizing the seriousness of what had just happened, Mitch grasped his son and held him in his arms as he died. After he was sure that Kearney had died, Mitch began to walk away aimlessly down the street in a haze. The neighbors who saw all of this called the police. Mitch then turned himself in without issue, but the police were afraid of retaliation from family and friends, so they kept a close eye on the surroundings, as lynch mobs or jail attacks were not as uncommon as they are now, when people felt justice needed to be served today and not later. Down here they took action from time to time. Hundreds of grief-stricken friends attended Kearney's funeral, which was held here at the Nibert Memorial Church, the very same church that held the funeral for legendary Mamie Thurman's funeral. We'll link that video in the description for those of you who didn't get to see it yet. It said that the church was so full that at least 200 people stood outside here in the parking lot after being turned away from coming inside. He was then buried at the now abandoned Logan City Cemetery on High Street, the article said. And that's up behind me, up that way. It's right up there. The graves up there, guys, they're mostly all lost to time. We did a couple stories and a walkthrough there last winter, and we never saw his grave. He is there somewhere, but it's very unlikely that he'll ever be found by anyone. He's buried in an unmarked grave in an abandoned cemetery. His grave is almost certainly lost to time, but his story is very much not lost to time. Now, it said that Mitch, the father, was overcome by grief, but that he fought hard to control his emotions. It said in the article that thoughts of him and his wife seeing their own son shot and killed by his own father brought tears and sobbing to the funeral visitors, adding to the pain of the whole situation. Kearney's wife, Mary, had come back from Ohio with her young daughter that she had with Kearney. She was at the funeral and was the central focus of all the people attending the funeral, as she should be. The funeral reached a peak of sadness when Kearney's mom stopped in front of the coffin to kiss the cold lips of her now dead young son. Mitch, the father, changed his story in a next newspaper edition. The news story goes like this. He said that he was leaving for work as a night watchman. He had a flashlight in one hand and a pistol in the other. When Kearney came at him, he threw his hands up, accidentally firing the gun. Then they wrestled for a moment and the gun went off again, with the first shot hitting the wall. Kearney then somehow fell on top of Mitch, knocking him to the ground. When Mitch got up and caught his breath, Kearney was dead. Now this story was obviously made up to save him from some jail time as a defense case. On April 12th, 1927, the Logan Banner printed that the murder case against Mitchell Henderson was being dismissed as an accident. Mitchell had indeed gotten away with murdering his own young son. Even if he was sad after the fact, that's not enough to make it right, is it? Kearney was still gone, and his wife and child were now facing the world alone. Mitch had put a burden on Kearney's wife's shoulders that she would never recover from. Mitch died 5 years later from what was listed on his death certificate as insanity. His wife died of pneumonia at 71 and is buried in a different cemetery. In the Logan Memorial Park is what it says on her death certificate, which is not the one here on High Street. That's also a famous graveyard where we went up to too. Mitch is buried at the Henderson Cemetery several miles away. We wanted to tell this story because at one point in 1926, this story mattered. This was a very big deal. This was important. The 1930 census shows Mitch and Molly still at the same house with 6 people from 3 years old to 21 years old. They had moved to a new location after the murder. From here, we're going to go try to find the gravesite where Mitch is buried. Now, I've never been there before. I've been through the area, but I have never been there. And I've got a general idea of where I'm going, but I guess we'll find out in just a few minutes, won't we? But I just wanted to bring you guys here by the the Nibert Methodist Church, like I said, here in Logan, West Virginia. This is where the funeral took place, and Mamie Thurman's funeral as well. It's a really old historic church, but the town itself, you know, like I mentioned, you know, back in the day, 100 years ago, you know, this town was flooded, you know, with money. There was all kinds of money to be had: coal, railroad, timber, all sorts of stuff. And you know, it's a nice little town now. It's a pretty little town, you know. That's the backs of the old buildings there. You know, a lot of old construction, really pretty place, but it is a shadow of its former self. You know, it's also very historic. But anyhow, we are going to head out here in just a few minutes, and I'm going to go up and look, just take a quick glance. I really don't think I'm going to find Kearney's grave. The graveyard is barely penetrable in the winter time, you know, when the weeds are down and stuff. I don't think I'm going to be able to get in there at all, but I'm going to try to do the story justice. You know, we're going to try to do it right. So I'm going to head up here in a minute, and I'm going to see if I can't find Kearney's grave. And here in a little while, after we leave from there, we're going to head up and see if we can't find Mitch's grave. All right. Okay, now this is the old abandoned Logan City Cemetery. Abandoned being the key word here in this phrase. You can see that's the town of Logan, and the church we were at is right down here behind that little clump of trees right there. I brought you up here once before for, well, a couple times for a couple different people actually. One for a story, and one trying to document what we could of the old graveyard. And Ann Lawson, of course, we did a story on her. Some of you may remember her. Check out the old fence. This is handmade. This is blacksmith made, as opposed to the more modern fence right there that fell apart. You can see the difference. The old fence here just rotted to pieces. The old handmade stuff, all the corners need is pinned back together, and it's good to go. You know, I thought that was kind of interesting, along with, you know, the grave's history, of course. Kearney's grave, I do not think we're going to be able to find anything, because most of these are unmarked, and you can tell, you know, we're going back into the deep woods here. I mean, you can see there's a child's grave right here. This is an abandoned cemetery. Supposedly the city owns it. It's the Logan City Cemetery, but there's apparently some sort of dispute about who actually owns the land, and nobody takes care of the graveyard. I mean, you can see, look at the vegetation there in that one, just completely overgrown. Look at that. And the whole place is like this. So I don't think, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to find Kearney's grave, but I wanted to come up here anyway and just kind of look around some of the stuff that I could get into and see if I could see something, anything. But you know, if it's an unmarked grave, you're not going to find it in here. You can't find a grave with a headstone, you know, let alone looking for a sunken spot somewhere, you know, in a place like this. But I just wanted to bring you guys up here and show you this, and show you why we're not going to be able to find Kearney's grave today. He is buried up here. There's several notable people, locals, who are buried up here, but they're pretty much all lost to time, all of them. Strange, isn't it? Ann Lawson, her husband was one of the very first settlers and had a trading post. And from what we can gather, he owned many miles, not acres, miles of land. He owned all of this at one time. He owned the entire town and everything around for many miles. Even from what we understand, he owned part of Williamson too. That's half an hour away from here. So how much, you know, by car, driving by car is half an hour. How much land did this old boy own? How wealthy? How wealthy? But, you know, this kind of goes to show, doesn't it? Money can't buy everything. It can't buy you another day on this earth. And it can't even keep your grave maintained, can it? Funny, huh? The way the world works. Okay, Kearney, I'm sorry, buddy. We weren't going to be able to find you. I kind of figured that. But anyway, you rest well. And we're going to head on up here for a second, guys. We'll go head on up in a second. And we're going to go see if we can't find Mitch's grave. This one here, like I said, you can see it's been vandalized, and there's headstones down here. I noticed people using headstones as retaining walls and stuff. Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? You know, you like to think that your grave is your grave, and you know, your final resting spot, that sort of thing. That's what everybody calls it. But not so much, is it? I mean, look at that. Look at that. Just knocked over, cinder blocks piled up here and there. Okay, I'm gonna head out. I've got a little bit of a drive from here. I've got to head up toward Chapmanville and then head up a holler to another holler to another holler. So, wish me luck, guys. I'm gonna go try anyway to find Mitch's grave.
So this is Kearney Henderson's death certificate. You can see he's 21. Shot through the chest. December 30th. His dad is James Mitch Henderson and mom Molly. And it says that he was buried in, just says Logan, West Virginia. So this is his mom's death certificate. She died later at 71. She died of pneumonia in her left lung. It says that she was buried at Logan Memorial Park in McConnell, West Virginia, which is kind of where I think he's buried, but the newspaper said he was buried at the Logan cemetery on High Street. But I don't know why his mother, as much as she loved him, would be buried at a separate location in Logan. But, you know, we're never going to know that one. And then this is his dad, James Mitchell Henderson. He said that he died of insanity, code 84. He was 63 years old, and this was 1931, which would have been 5 years after he killed his son. And it said that he was buried at Henderson, West Virginia cemetery. And there's only one of those in the Logan area.
Well, we are out there now. It's actually much further out than I thought it was. I wanted to show y'all this. I am on a really narrow, really windy really steep mountainside here. Check this out. Don't know how far I am from the top, but it's very curvy. Very pretty though, isn't it? Like I have about 4 more miles to my next mile markers, a little town, and go from there. Gotta figure it out. The address doesn't show, so I'm gonna have to be one of those. Good thing I got on Google Earth and researched the area. I think I have an idea, but GPS ain't gonna be much help on this one. Desolate little area in the middle of nowhere. Now, if I'm right, this is Shively, West Virginia, and I'm about maybe a quarter mile right back this way from the geographical center of town. Yeah. The place I'm actually looking for was called Home Place Drive. Now, there is no Home Place Drive. You know, Google Earth, if you try it, it wants to take you to Homer, West Virginia. That's not where we're going. This is the part right here where doing your homework ahead of time either pays off or, well, quite frankly, you fall on your face, you know, to be honest. If I'm right, this used to be Home Place Drive right there. And if I'm right, the graveyard is right up this little hill right here. Now, I'm just ballparking it. There was an old post office. I don't know if y'all know this old trick or not. If you don't know a lot about the area you're going to, thing you're trying to find, look for post offices in the area on Google Earth, and then use the ruler to measure the distance from that post office to where you're going. Most post offices, even the old out of service ones, are still on Google Earth. So I use the old Shively, West Virginia post office, which is shut down. It's been closed for, God, decades, it looked like. I'll show it to you on the way back out. Didn't think about it. But this is 1.3 miles from there. It looks exactly like what I'm looking for on Google Earth. It was just a little opening, 1.3 miles, you know, right down from the post office. We're about to find out. If I'm right, Mitch is buried right up here. Y'all ready? Let's go find out. Now, I could be totally wrong. There may not even be a graveyard here. You know, I literally do not know. It fits. I'll put it that way. Geographically speaking, it fits. But there are no, you can see there are no markers. There's no nothing. Just an old house across the road that's about to fall in. And I hear something, some kind of machinery echoing up the holler, echoing up the valley from, you know, probably miles down through there. It looks like somebody has been coming back up in here for some reason. I can see a little, looks like a little path, kind of, sort of. I see something. It's a graveyard. It is a graveyard. It's a small one, but it's a graveyard. Looking good so far, isn't it? We're about to find out. Anthony. There's no name on this one. Don't look like it's that old. It hasn't settled smooth yet. This one's a 99. Dingus. Helena Adams. I don't see him. There's someone here. Dwight Dingus. Flora and Harvey Dingus. Harvey and Maud Dingus. Anthony Sean Dingus. And one unmarked. Wait a minute. I see a sign. It's fell. I'll put this back up either way. That is Dwight Stefan Dingus Jr. Young man, 42. Young by my standards anyway. I'll put that back where it goes. See the little hole right there where it was even in. But he's either back in there, it's a possibility. Back in the woods, I can see what's left of an old chain link fence going back. So I can't tell for sure. He could very well be in an unmarked grave as well. Very easily. Getting ready to start raining on me too. That's nice, but expected. Well, there's a couple back in here too. It looks like there's one there. There's one here by the tree. It looks like one right there by that fallen tree as well. So, anyhow, his death certificate says that he is here, but I'm not finding a headstone. So, we'll just operate under the assumption that he is indeed here. Looks like some kind of path going back through there. I wonder if there might be more back that way. See if we see any more graves. There's something up in there. Up in that tree. Oh, what if there were? You'd never find them in this, would you? There are. I see something. I see one right there. Looks like I see some right here as well. So it looks like there's more back into the woods. He very well could be right here, and we'd never know it, would we? But I guess that's the whole point of doing these old stories, these old historic stories. That's the whole point, you know. The whole story has been lost to time, you know. Kearney's wife and child, you know, they had to face the world without their father, and she had to, you know, make ends meet on her own without her husband. You know, whether it was an accident or not. I mean, I guess I can see that. If you accidentally shot your child, I can see that maybe causing you to go insane. You know, I can see that. But I guess we'll never know that part, will we? That's the one part of the story that we will never know. We know what happened, and we know some of the details. We know Mitch is supposedly here somewhere, and Kearney is supposedly back at the other graveyard somewhere in an unmarked, overgrown grave. It's just strange, isn't it? You know, your whole life, and your plans get changed sometimes. Sometimes whether it's a momentary moment of rage or an accident. You know, I guess when you get right down to it, it really doesn't matter, does it? You know, Kearney was still dead. You know, I mean, everyone here, literally, guys, everybody here had a badge. You know, they were some municipality, some town, Baldwin Felts detective agents, Pinkertons, you know. Everybody had a badge, and they all claimed to be men of the law. But we know there was plenty of corruption that went on here back in the day. We've done several stories about murders that were just completely and obviously completely just covered up, you know, and because it was, well, quite frankly, it was back in the middle of nowhere in West Virginia, and news really didn't get out that well. News didn't get in that well either. So, you know, all it took was a couple local friends in positions of power, and you got away with murder. But anyway, like I said, I wanted to bring you guys out and tell you this story. You know, all of the people may be gone. Kearney may be gone. His wife's gone. Their children, their child, the little girl. You know, they're all gone. This is 100 years ago. But their story is no less important, you know. That they were still people. They were still humans just like us, you know. And what happened to them was terrible. It was a shame, you know, that something like that were to happen. Stuff like that is why we do the stories that we do. You know, things like that we don't just let them lay there. You know, we come out here and, you know, we could sit at home and tell you the story just as easily, you know, a whole lot easier as a matter of fact. You know, I'm not out climbing mountains and, you know, running 2-3 hours to try to find these places. But realistically speaking, to make these videos and do this right and show you these places, you have to show you these places. That makes sense? You have to actually come out and look for these. And sometimes you don't find them. Sometimes you strike out. But at least you tell Kearney's story. You know, he was a young man, and he deserved to have his story told. And now we've told it. It looks like one right there, as a matter of fact, right beside that tree. Looks like a unmarked grave. But I didn't find his grave marker, but I'd almost guarantee you Mitch is here somewhere. We just don't know where. Okay, well, I guess I need nothing to do now but turn around and start heading back for the house. I've got a long drive ahead of me. Beautiful day though, isn't it? I just love getting out here in the wilderness and middle of nowhere, looking for sights and bring you guys along and tell you stories. It's been really cool. It really has. And by the way, thank you guys to all of our viewers, all of our page members, all of our Patreon supporters, all that stuff. Guys, thank y'all a million. You know, your contributions, you know, really help us. You know, Heather and I ain't exactly rolling in it. You know what I mean? And this stuff costs money. And so every time that you guys, you know, a super chat or something like that, we appreciate it. I'll just put it that way. And I just wanted to mention that real quick and just say thank you. That's all. Anyway, I'll shut up about that. All right. I guess nothing to do but load back up and head out. And we'll stop by the post office. I want to show y'all this, the geographical center of Shively, West Virginia. I want you guys to see this. This is the old Shively post office. I wanted to stop here just for a second and show you guys this. Check this out. This is the geographical center of Shively, West Virginia. One, 2, 3 houses and a post office, which is now closed. The post office is closed. But I just wanted to show you guys that. You know, a lot of you think you live in rural communities. Yeah, a post office and 3 houses. Top that. All right, I'll quit goofing off. I just thought I'd show y'all this. Anyway, from Shively, West Virginia, guys, this is Leo with the Hillbilly Files. Leo out. We'll see you next time. You guys have a great day.